Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and well, it is that time again for me to get out of the game room and get out on the road and take a retro gaming road trip. I am so excited. So for this road trip, I am accompanied by my good buddy, Drunken Master Paul, and he and I are going to take 3 days, 2 nights cruising to the other side of Washington State, looking for games, and at the end of this video, I'm going to show you everything that I picked up. Now, you guys know that I live in the Seattle area, but what you may not know about Washington State is that it is divided by a very tall mountain range called the Cascades. And because of that, over on the western side where Seattle is, it tends to be, well, you guys probably know it as very wet, very cloudy most of the time. It's also very moderate. It doesn't get too hot here, it doesn't get too cold. However, on the other side of that mountain range, on the rest of Washington State, well, it's a very different environment, completely different. And so when we started this road trip, you can see here it was just pouring rain in the Seattle area. And even when we got up close to the top of the mountain range, it was actually snowing. This is the first snow I'd seen of this year. But then as we cross the mountain range and get into eastern Washington, well, suddenly the skies open up, it's blue, it's warm, and as you can see, it's a very different ecosystem over there. It's very flat. They actually have 4 seasons over there. It's a much different part of Washington State. After about 2 hours of driving, we roll into Yakima, and Yakima is probably considered a medium-sized town in Washington State. It has about 100,000 people living here, and it definitely still has that small town vibe. And the thing that Yakima and the surrounding area is most known for is that 77% of all the hops grown in the United States comes from this area. So they are really big on beer here. And as much as I love beer, don't get me wrong, but the first place we're going to stop is going to be a game store. I've heard a lot about this. So we're going to meet up with John Riggs at his local retro gaming store called 1UP Games. And we're going to check it out. I'm pretty excited about this place.
Hi, my name is Alex Smith, and I'm the owner of 1UP Games in Yakima, Washington. I originally started with just like doing original Nintendo 360, Super Nintendo games, and obviously it's grown from there quite a bit. Now we specialize in Funkos, used toys. We do some new toys, a lot of obviously video games. We still, original Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and 64 are probably our biggest draw to this day. But we get a lot of younger kids who are coming in looking for PS5, Switch, and Xbox One games.
So as you can see here, it's a really nice and pretty decent sized store. It's amazing to me how Funko Pops have really just taken over the collector market. I mean, it's impressive to see for sure. As I was walking around the store, one thing I immediately noticed, and you probably do too, is that all of the games are facing forward. Therefore, they're really easy to read. And I gotta tell you, I absolutely love that. Often when I go in these stores for the first time, I like to ask the owner to, show me some of the more interesting and unusual things that they have in stock, and, well, he did not disappoint. Obviously, being a retro gaming store, he had some pretty collectible and expensive NES cartridges, always nice to see. Check this out, he has some Steel Battalion action figures from Capcom. Never seen those before. As well as this really cool looking History of Zelda VHS. This is obviously from Japan, but man, again, I've never seen that before and it looks so cool. In this back area here, I thought it was pretty cool that they have a bunch of Guitar Hero and Rock Band guitars there. That's something that probably just maybe even a few years ago were pretty much worthless, but then I guess basically because of the pandemic and more people at home, that these have started to kind of go up in price and become a little bit more desirable. So that was pretty neat to see. Also, check this out, this entire section of the wall here dedicated to all of the original NESs that they have. It's funny because I was trying to think just how long I've known John Riggs now, and it has to be over 5 years, I would think. And he's always telling me, hey dude, you got to come out to Yakima and check out our retro gaming scene. And this store here is definitely the highlight of that. I guess there used to be another store in town, but sadly COVID and the pandemic shut that one down, so this is the main place to go. But I have to say, if you're going to only have one retro gaming store in your town, this is not a bad one to have. It's, as you guys can see here, it's very clean. It's really well stocked. Yeah, I'm impressed, man. This is a cool place. And so I did pick up some stuff here, but I'm going to save all that to the end of this video when we get back to Seattle and I show you all of the pickups.
If you want to check us out, visit us on Facebook at Yakima Games, or give us a call at 509-901-9575. We're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
After we left here, John Riggs offered to drive us around and show us some more of his town, and we ended up going to where he works. Now, many people may not know this, but John Riggs' day job is actually a DJ. He works at the local radio station there and helps out recording commercials. He also interviews people. He does some of the programming, and he gave us a private tour of that. And I have to say, this was pretty cool to see. It was really interesting to see how this one small building houses and produces 6 different radio stations that the entire town listens to across different genres, and the employees there just hop back and forth between them. So for instance, Riggs was telling me that, you know, part of his day will be working with, say, the country station. Sometimes he may work with the news station. Then he'll hop over into the rock station, and they just all kind of help each other out. It was really cool to see. All right, well, that's our first night in Yakima, and the next day we woke up to yet another sunny day. It was funny because I looked out the window and I was like, oh man, I know in Seattle it's all cloudy and raining, and over here, nothing but sunshine. So basically we left Yakima at around 8 a.m. because the drive to Spokane is a long one. And for this one, we actually decided to take the scenic route a little bit to Spokane, try to stay off the main highways a little bit and take in some of the local landscape. And I have to say, it did not disappoint. Again, just lots and lots of rolling fields, beautiful, you know, hills, flat plains. Again, stuff that you just typically don't think of when you think of Washington State. And that's kind of why I wanted to highlight it here, because it's beautiful. And like I mentioned previously, I've never been to Spokane before. That is totally on me. Just for whatever reason, I've never made the long journey over to the other side of the state here. But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised when we arrived there just how big and beautiful the city is. To give you an idea, there is actually about 230,000 people that live in Spokane. So it's a decent sized city, and that was apparent as soon as we got there. But as you guys know, we are here to do some game hunting. And so there are 2 stores that we want to hit here. They are both owned by the same owner, but in very different parts of town. And so we head over to Game World. And yeah, immediately I can tell that this is my kind of place, packed to the rafters with gaming goodness and a lot more.
All right, so here at Game World, we have a huge selection of retro games all the way up to some of the newest titles for PS5, Xbox Series X, and it goes all the way back to Atari, and I think we have the biggest selection in Washington as well.
Now, it's pretty funny, as we walked in there, Paul immediately noticed all of the swords that are on the wall. That's something you typically don't see in a retro gaming store, and Paul's eyes were just immediately drawn to it. Now, the thing about Paul is, he is a martial arts teacher. He's been teaching Filipino stick fighting called arnis for the past 23 years, and so he has a very large sword collection as well. He knows how to use them, and so that was really cool because when we got there, they were more than happy to let him mess around with some of them, and I could tell he was in his element. One of the things I was immediately drawn to in here was the copy of Snatcher, a game you typically do not see anymore, and it was amazing to see in the collector case here, as well as a graded Pokemon. I asked the owner what they thought that might be worth, and you know, these days, man, you know, it could be worth thousands of dollars. It's insane. And what's crazy about it, this game just walked in the door. It was traded in by one of the customers. So yeah, that's pretty killer. I also noticed something here that I hadn't seen before. Check out these crystal ball Pokemon. So basically these are I guess custom made. I've never seen these before, and I guess that if you get the larger ones, they actually light up. They were telling me that these are a massive seller, so that was something that was pretty cool, I thought. And then check out these third-party custom controllers. I thought these were pretty cool. I hadn't seen something like this before. Obviously, you have Cyberpunk 2077, you have Spider-Man, and a bunch more. These look really cool in person. I was very tempted to pick up that Spider-Man one. And then check out these fully licensed 3D pixel frames. Bunch of retro games here represented in 3D. Great for a game room, don't you think? And check out that wall of boxed systems. Now, they were telling me that all of those are complete. Every single one of those has the consoles in it. Man, I thought that was impressive. I was like, wow, okay, there's some pretty cool stuff up there. And then they showed us the massive storage room. And as you can see here, it is just rows and rows of extra games. I mean, when they claim that they probably have the largest inventory of games in the area, yeah, I believe them. I mean, I was blown away at all the overstock that they have here. It's incredibly impressive.
You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and shopgameworld.com.
And so if you couldn't tell, Paul and I just had a great time visiting this store. It was a great first impression coming into Spokane. And yes, I bought some stuff, but I am not done. A couple miles away is the second store. And well, again, immediately Paul just rolls in there and notices another batch of swords. Again, that's something that's very specific to the store. You know, I'm not really into collecting swords, but man, Paul's eyes lit up. It was really cool to see that. So he immediately took to that and started swinging swords around, probably making people a little bit nervous, but that's okay. He's a professional. But you guys know me. I like to start my tour of a new retro gaming store by checking out the collector case. And this place does not disappoint. A nice mix of retro in there, as well as some collector stuff. More of the expensive complete games, especially when it comes to PlayStation 1. Those were pretty neat to see. And the manager was telling me that figures are a really big draw for their customers in these stores, so they make sure and have some really cool stuff available here. You see some of it here. It's a mix of, you know, mostly anime as well as just animation in general, plus video games, stuff like that. And then here's something you typically don't see very much anymore, and that is just a ton of game strategy guides. It used to be that I could walk into, like, say, a half-price books or something like that, and there'd just be a ton of these. But over the years, it seems like that they've just kind of, well, I don't think they make them that much anymore. But it was amazing to see a store that had so many of them. I mean, this is pretty cool. You know, you may not know this about me, but I actually do have a lot of strategy guides that I bought years ago. I probably don't use them as much as I used to, but I still think they're pretty cool. I like them. And then check this out. I thought this was pretty cool. So they also have a lot of loose copies of some of the more collectible PlayStation 1 games. Now, this is great for people who just want to play the game. They don't necessarily need all of the packaging, and, you know, they just want to save a bit of money. So I thought this was really cool. And like the previous stores, I did pick up some cool stuff, but it's time to call it a night. We are going to go to bed now because we have a long drive back to Seattle in the morning. Packing up the car to head home the next morning, I reflected on this trip, and both Paul and I agreed that this was a really fun trip, and really I just didn't schedule enough time for us to explore it further. I mean, I guess I didn't realize just how far Spokane was from Seattle. You know, driving back home took 4.5 hours or something like that. So it was really hard to do this in 3 days and 2 nights. Meaning that I'm going to have to basically do this trip again and hit other cities and other retro gaming stores, you know, in the future, because like I said, we had a fantastic time. It was just really great to get out and visit something new that we hadn't seen before, you know? But now I'm home and, well, the weather is crappy again, and so it's time to check out the games I picked up. Starting with Wolfenstein 3D on the Atari Jaguar. This was a complete blind buy. Basically, this is me seeing a random Atari Jaguar cartridge that I don't own in the collection, and Well, I had to buy it. I mean, I don't play the Atari Jaguar that often, but it is a really cool system to collect for. I love how the cartridges look. And I think that this actually might be a decent port of, Wolfenstein 3D. I've heard that actually like the resolution and some of the technical aspects of this are actually better than the original PC port. I'll have to let you know if that turns out to be true or not, but it was a cool find. And then for some reason, I ended up finding a bunch of PSP games that I do not have in my collection. And this trip was kind of weird because I just ended up finding a bunch of them and picked up a ton. So I'm going to start with these three here. So you see on the left there, you see Prinny 2, as well as Tokobot, and then Megamind. Now, I used to have Tokobot years ago when the PSP was new. That's actually a pretty cool 3D puzzle platforming game that's exclusive to the PSP and is pretty fun. But then you see Prinny 2 here. Now, for the longest time, Prinny 1 and 2 were exclusive to the PSP. These were really cool kind of 2.5D platforming games. But recently they actually got ported to the Switch. So if you've ever had the desire to play these games, they're actually really clever. Very difficult, very funny games. Pick up the Switch version, but now I have the first and the second Prinny game. As well as Megamind, the Blue Defender. So this is a game that came out on pretty much every system at the time, the Xbox 360, the DS, things like that. But I hadn't seen the PSP port of it. I knew nothing about this. It was just super cheap. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm kind of leaning towards doing a complete PSP collection. I'm typically not a guy who goes for complete collections, but the PSP is one of them that I absolutely love, and a lot of these games are super cheap, so I thought I'd pick it up. I played it a little bit. It's not great, but it's probably meant to be a kid's game, so it wasn't terrible, but it's also not great. But again, if I'm going for a complete collection, it's got to be there. Also picked up a copy of Taito Legends Power Up. Now, at the time, I don't know if it's still true, but at the time this was a PSP exclusive, and this is one of those compilations where they have a bunch of arcade games, and then they also do some kind of remixed versions or remade versions of some of the classic games. I would say that overall, this is probably not a great one. I saw the list of games that they kind of bumped up or remade, and there wasn't many that I was actually interested in, but again, I do like some of the classic arcade games that are in here, especially Rastin, so that was cool to get. Two fighting games that I didn't have in my PSP collection, Blaze Blue. Now, I don't know much about these. I guess they are 2D fighting games, and supposedly the Xbox 360 version was pretty good when it came out, and I was kind of surprised to see that there is a PSP version of these, so had to pick them up. And then here's a game I always intended to pick up on the PSP, but for whatever reason, I never did. That is Every Extend Extra. So this is made by a really great developer called Q Entertainment, which made Lumines, which was a game I did play a ton on the PSP, but now, for whatever reason, I finally am adding this to my collection. I've heard very good things about it. It's kind of like a puzzle shoot 'em up thing, so I'm very excited to check it out. I'll actually be kind of curious to know down in the comments if you played it and if you recommend it. I also found this Media Manager for the PSP, and I remember when this came out years ago. I just never owned it, and then I found a copy actually at Game World for just a couple bucks. And again, this goes along with me, potentially going down the route of doing a complete PSP collection. This just seems like something that I would need to have in the collection, even though I probably would never really use it. How often are you going to be putting music and movies onto your PSP? And there's probably better, easier ways to do it today, but I wanted to pick it up. And then check this out. You have this PSP case that has this kind of lenticular God of War 3 cover on it. Again, just a couple bucks. I don't really need a case for the PSP, but this is probably one of the coolest ones I've ever seen. And then check this out. This is a Galaxian 2 handheld game that was released back in 1981, I believe. This is one of those early LCD games, and essentially this is a 1 or 2 player version of Galaxian. A total blind buy. I haven't actually messed with it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it because it could be a lot of fun, especially when I have people over and, having a party or something like that. I also saw this Wing Commander controller for the original NES. Now, the reason why this stood out was because, well, I actually like its design. It looks pretty comfortable. It looks like it can be played either left or right-handed. It also has rapid fire built into it. I like that kind of arcade style, controller right there. But then also, it's made by Hori, and Hori are known for making really great third-party controllers, so I couldn't pass this up. You guys know that I love my big box PC games, and you might be surprised to learn that I have never had a physical copy of Where in the World or Where in the United States is Carmen Sandiego. Well, I corrected that problem on this trip here. I don't believe this is the original version. This is a version that came out in the 90s, and I think there was probably a version that came out in the 80s, but again, don't quote me on that. But what's cool about this is that it actually comes with these almanacs in there. So these boxes are extremely heavy because they have these books in there, which is pretty cool. This is what I love about big box PC games, is that you always got this extra stuff. It just made it that much more special. I did pick up a couple of DS and 3DS games, complete blind buys. I have no idea if these are fun or not. I just saw them for a relatively cheap price and wanted to take a plunge, including Arkanoid DS. I picked this one up because I thought, yeah, Arkanoid is probably pretty cool on the DS. I could see where controlling that with the with the touchpad at the bottom there probably works really well. I have no idea because I haven't played it yet, but that was a pretty cool find. As well as Wreck-It Ralph on the 3DS. Again, I don't know much about this game yet. I haven't played it, but it's a 3DS game, and it looks like it's a 2.5D platforming puzzle game. So it could be kind of cool. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But then I saw this, and I was like, oh man, okay, I have to get this. Now, I don't collect a lot of Funko Pops. It's an obsession that I'm just not prepared to have. I know a lot of people who love collecting these, but occasionally when I see one that speaks to me, I gotta make the leap. And, well, no surprise, obviously one based on Eddie from Iron Maiden. I had to get it, and yeah, again, I'm not gonna go down the route. I'm not gonna buy a ton of Funko Pops, but occasionally there are some heavy metal ones that I just have to get, and this is one of them. All right, guys, well, that's my trip and pickups from Eastern Washington. That was a whirlwind of a trip, and I have to say, first of all, thank you very much to Drunken Master Paul for going on this trip with me. It had been too long since we'd hung out like this, and I miss you, buddy. That was so much fun. Also, thank you very much to the stores that let us film there. Every single person that we met was just absolutely amazing, super friendly, and just a pleasure to hang out with. You guys are absolutely amazing. Yeah, I would go back to each place in a heartbeat. They're highly recommended. And I want to thank you guys for watching. These videos, man, they're a ton of fun to make, but they're also a lot of work, and I'm really glad that you guys seem to like them. So if you do, please give this a thumbs up. Comment down below where you'd like me to go next. I gotta be honest with you, I could do this in every single state. I mean, just let me know what states I need to go to, because this never gets old. It's so much fun to visit new places, meet new people, and, do some game hunting, It's a good thing. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.
I'm Iron Man.